Hello and welcome everyone to another webinar in the Future of GRC series presented to you by Acuity Risk Management. Today we'll be going through the webinar Managing Risk in the Extended Enterprise. Oops. Just a quick introduction. Hello everyone, my name's Andrew Bowden. I'm a principal consultant here at Acuity Risk Management. If you weren't aware, Acuity Risk Management is a GRC software and service provider here in London. As I said, I'm a principal consultant here, so I work with our clients to implement our stream technology into our clients to their requirements to be able to manage their risks successfully in an integrated risk management platform. I'm also joined on today's webinar by Michael Rasmussen. I'm sure most of you all know who Michael is, most of you will know who Michael is who's joining the webinar today. Michael's an international GRC pundit with GRC 2020. Would you like to introduce yourself as well there, Michael?
Certainly. I'm Michael Rasmussen, and my job is research. I spend my time and days from early morning to late in the evening, understanding what are the challenges that organizations around the world face in context of governance, risk management, and compliance, and how they go about solving that with strategy, process, and technology. So I like to refer to myself as a research analyst. I guess there's an advisory consulting aspect to what I do. But first and foremost, my job as research is to understand what are the challenges and pressures of governance, risk, and compliance across industries and around the world, and how can organizations solve those challenges and approach them.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Before I jump into the webinar even further, I'll just like to go through a few house rules in terms of the webinar. As we go through today's webinar, please feel free to ask any questions that you might have as we go through some details of risk in the extended enterprise. You can email those in, so you can see my email address there as well on the page, and also Michael's. But we do also have a question link on the right hand side through the GoToWebinar platform. So if you do have any questions throughout today's session, please feel free to add those in on the side. Also on the right on the GoToWebinar, you'll also see that we have handouts. So we've got some data sheets with regards to vendor risk management, also a solutions perspective from Michael as well on there. So yeah, please feel free to explore those as well there. Just a quick one as well, when we do end today's webinar, there will be a survey that will pop up on screen. Please, can you just it takes a couple of minutes to complete. Please, can you just take 2 minutes out of your day to fill that in? It's really helpful for us just so we can better provide more relevant and up-to-date webinars and really listen to you for what you want to hear in our webinars going forward. So as I said, this webinar is Managing Risk in the Extended Enterprise. This is part of a series. It's actually a continuation of a series of the Future of GRC. We've also got a couple more coming up in the series. So we've also got corporate integrity, provided and defensibility in compliance and ethics. That's on May the 26th, and that will be with my colleague Richard Mail, and also joined by Michael as well for that one. And then again towards the middle of June, we've got another one booked in for an integrated approach to privacy and security in the modern enterprise. That one will be by our founder Simon Marvel and also Michael as well. So it'll be interesting thoughts on that one as well. So please put those dates in your diary, May the 26th and June the 17th for future webinars as well. Let's just go through the the agenda for today. We've just gone through our introductions. What we'll be then going through is Michael's presentation. I'll be handing over to him to go through his views on risk in the extended enterprise. What we'll then do is jump over to a demonstration of the Stream Integrated Risk Management platform, which is built by Acuity Risk Management. So I'll be going through that in terms of how we could manage that risk in the extended enterprise and pull on some points that Michael mentioned in his demonstration. Finally, we'll just go through some further resources such as handouts that I've mentioned, and also where to get some more information on Stream as well. And then finally, we'll go through the audience Q&A session at the end as well. So as I mentioned, if you do have questions, please put them into the question box on the right-hand side, and we'll have some time to go through those at the end as well. Okay, at this point, I'll hand over to Michael. He'll be taking you through the managing risks in the extended enterprise.
Excellent. Well, it is an absolute pleasure to be here with everybody for this virtual hour. So today's organization is complex. It's dynamic. It's changing minute by minute, second by second. It's distributed and across what we call the extended enterprise, which we'll get into in the next few slides. And it's very disruptive. COVID-19 is just one example of many that we see in the disruption to business in today's modern business environment. But all this comes together in what I would call navigating chaos, and being able to address the dynamic, distributed, disrupted nature of business. Again, today's modern business is changing minute by minute, second by second. But not only is it changing, but its third-party relationships are changing. And so what might have been a proper business relationship 2 years ago might not be a proper business relationship today, because their security's changed, their employees changed, their processes have changed. Furthermore, most of the organization's heavily reliant on third-party relationships. You look at the extended enterprise. I was talking to a global automobile manufacturer not too long ago, and they're restructuring their whole enterprise risk management program because they cannot define and manage their risks within traditional brick and mortar business and traditional employees anymore. That half their organization and operations are the extended enterprise of suppliers, vendors, outsourcers, service providers, contractors, consultants, brokers, agents, dealers, intermediaries, temporary workers, you name it. All these bring risk into the organization. And we have to be able to manage the extended enterprise and all these different challenges that we face in this context. And if we weren't in a pandemic and we're in our corporate offices and you walk down the halls of the corporate office, you sit in the conference rooms, it's not uncommon that half the people that you walk by or sit in a meeting with are not employees of the organization, but they are third parties. They are the outsourcers and service providers and contractors and consultants and so forth. And today's modern organization is extended and nested supply chain relationships, subcontracting relationships. The organization is not defined by brick and mortar walls and traditional employees. It's this extended web of relationships. And there is no hard and fast border. It's not like we can define this is where the organization starts and stops anymore. It's not black and white or binary. Because of the nested levels of relationships and interdependencies and supply chains and subcontracting relationships, there's shades of gray as far as, are they part of the organization or not? And this is all challenging. COVID-19 has come in and showed us the challenges we face in third-party risk management and being able to manage risk in the extended enterprise. What starts off with the health and safety risks has brought in a whole range of other risks. We have IT security risks in the home office environment, not just for our employees, but our third parties. Those outsourcers and service providers and contractors and consultants and even temporary workers, they're working from their home offices as well. And are their home offices secure? When you're outsourcing your call center and things like that, and people are answering their phones from home with your third-party relationships to support that call center, and they're accessing personal data and information like that. Are things secure? I look around the room, my speaker in front of me is connected to the internet. My exercise bike behind me is connected to the internet. My TV is connected, wall outlets, my blender in my kitchen's connected. I'm a third party to a lot of organizations. If there's some type of vulnerability or Trojan horse in any of these devices, that could, lead to compromise of my system and the data I have of clients and the connections I might have to companies. That's significant. And Trojan horses are real in third-party relationships. Yeah, you can look at the SolarWinds example, in which that what was essentially a Trojan horse compromised hundreds of companies just a few months ago. You can look at the exposure of Internet of Things, like the UK's casino incident, which hackers are able to break in and compromise video cameras in a fish tank and are able to steal data. The Internet of Things, whether it's in a corporate environment or in a home office environment, is real, and it's real in our third-party relationships as well. But it's more than just internet information security. We have increased risk of bribery and corruption in third-party relationships, dealing with U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, UK Bribery Act, SEPIN in France, and more. And this involves, bribery and corruption. Being able, and about just, I think the stats are about 90% of bribery and corruption issues and incidents involve third-party relationships, those brokers and agents and deal makers and things that the organization employs can bribe foreign government officials. And so we have increased risk of bribery and corruption because of COVID-19. Why? Because there's constrained supply chains. There's limited government contracts with increased competition for those contracts. Import and export has slowed down. And so that has all impacted third-party relationships and increased risk exposure of bribery and corruption in those relationships. And we need to be aware of that. There's increased risk of modern slavery in third-party relationships. As factories have been hit by the virus, there's a chance that they might be staffing with prison labor or forced labor or child labor, which is a significant modern slavery concern. There's a lot of resiliency issues. We've seen this significantly with COVID-19, in which a lot of shipping containers are used to ship personal protective equipment to remote areas of the world like Africa and things. And these shipping containers are stuck in these remote countries, and we have a shortage of shipping containers to be able to ship goods on ships around the seas, because the containers are, you know, in remote, odd places of the world where they're not normally there. We've seen issues, and not directly with COVID-19, but it compounds it because of the shipping container issue, like the backage of the Suez Canal when things were stopped there, and how that constrains supply chains. You know, it's an interconnected risk environment, and our third-party risks are significant. The physicist Fritjof Capra stated, the more we study the major problems of our time, the more we come to realize that they cannot be understood in isolation, that they are systemic problems, which means that they are interconnected and interdependent. And we need to be able to see this big picture of risk as it intersects with our third-party relationships, and be able to understand all of this in context of the organization. Today's modern organization is not an island. If we take the English poet John Donne said, no man is an island entire of himself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And we replace that word man with organization, and the poet still rings so true today, in which no organization is an island entire of itself. Every organization is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. We cannot really define where the organization starts and stops, because we have the extended enterprise. Those suppliers and vendors and outsourcers and service providers and contractors and consultants and dealers and brokers and agents and intermediaries and temporary workers, they are part of the organization. And it's an interconnected web of islands, you can say, that all intersect and are dependent upon each other. And we need to be able to manage this. So today's modern organization needs to be able to see the tree as well as the forest, that individual third-party relationship, as well as the interconnectedness of these relationships on the organization. But the tree's not enough. It also gets down to the leaves and branches. I've talked to many firms that, you know, need to get to the details. They can't just manage risk at the relationship level. They have to be able to manage risk at the contract or facility level or the agreement level. You know, one bank I was talking to said that, you know, we might have, you know, 100 agreements with a specific outsourcer. We have one outsourcer, one relationship. We might have 100 contracts and service level agreements. We need to know that 89 of them touch GDPR information and 11 do not. I sat on the Social Accountability Advisory Board of a Fortune 100 company for a period of time to help them with their strategy, process, and technology in dealing with international labor standards and supply chain code of conduct across their supply chain. They had 5,000 suppliers with 20,000 facilities. So one supplier might have had one facility, another supplier could have 50 facilities. They didn't just manage things at those 5,000 supplier relationships, they managed risk down to the facility level, the 20,000 facilities, around things like child labor, forced labor, working hours, wage and hour, and health and safety of the supply chain, and of the health and safety of the employees in the supply chain. And so all that risk was measured and reported at the facility level, not the relationship level. So the organization needs to be able to see the tree and the forest, but also the leaves and branches on the tree to be able to manage that relationship correctly in the organization. So as we face this and we look at ways to address third-party risk in the organization today, you know, we need to understand uncertainty in context. You know, what are the objectives in the relationship? And that's an important question, because risk, if we look at the ISO 31000 definition, risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And so to me, when we talk about third-party risk management, I think we're putting the cart before the horse, because it actually starts with third-party governance. And that's why I like talking about third-party GRC, third-party governance, risk management, and compliance. Because at the end of the day, when we talk about this, it's going to start with the governance of the relationship. What are the objectives in the relationship, and are we achieving those objectives? What are the objectives in each contract, service level agreement, or facility? Are we achieving the objectives at that level? And be able to measure, are we reliably achieving objectives? I think we need to put the G before the R, because it starts with the governance and setting and directing and making sure that we can reliably achieve objectives. I'll talk more about that in a couple slides. But we face a range of third-party risks in the organization. We have code of conduct risks, which are becoming extremely important in the area of ESG and diversity and inclusion in all these different areas of privacy and so forth. Code of conduct actually wraps up a variety of these other risks around this wheel here. But you know, a lot of times we have mishap approaches to code of conduct. I remember reviewing one large organization's supply chain code of conduct. And this was their code of conduct policy that was going out to tens of thousands of facilities in a global supply chain. And I was completely shocked, you know, because the code of conduct was, first off, written in the passive voice, not the active voice. It had long, complex paragraphs filled with legalese. And in that context, I mean, the audience that read this code of conduct, for the most part, had English as a second language, and it was only published in English. So just how we're writing the supply chain code of conduct, we're writing it in a way that makes it hard for a native English speaker to read, let alone somebody that has English as a second language, because it was written in the passive voice with complex language and long paragraphs and everything. But what really struck me was the first paragraph said company believes, the second paragraph says company strongly believes. So we have different levels of belief in the supply chain code of conduct? I don't think so. It was careless writing. But you know, somebody that has English as a second language, which was a lot of the audience of this supply chain code of conduct, is going to naturally think that the second paragraph is more important than the first paragraph, because the second paragraph includes that word strongly. We have code of conduct, supply chain and vendor code of conduct. You have a huge focus on operational resiliency and viability. And you see things like the FCA, Bank of England, PRA, Operational Resiliency Guidelines. And I mean, the publication from the FCA mentions like third-party vendor risk, I think over 30 times in the document. But you look at the EU DORA, the Bank for International Settlements, Basel guidance, and the US Office of the Comptroller of the Currencies guidance on operational resiliency, they all touch on third-party risks. We got the issue of privacy in dealing with EU GDPR, California CCPA, and more. And you know, the slight majority of data protection breaches and incidents happen in third-party relationships. And when you look at the Ponemon Institute's cost of a data breach, you know, the cost of a data breach is higher when it involves a third party. But we've got privacy, because those third-party relationships are managing and interacting with personal data. Information security concerns, and we can point to the SolarWinds example as a third-party relationship that had a significant security exposure. Anti-bribery and corruption, US Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, UK Bribery Act, SEP and DO. About 90% of bribery and corruption incidents happen through and with third-party relationships. We have a huge focus on environmental social governance, ESG reporting, which, you know, is replacing what we used to be called CSR, corporate social responsibility and sustainability. Huge push. And I just had a blog and newsletter that went out today, just a few hours ago, specifically on this topic. You look at what's happening in the EU with the EU directive on corporation due diligence, and Germany's corresponding law that is going to be passed this summer on Corporate Due Diligence Act. These are significant laws on ESG reporting across the extended enterprise and third-party relationships to be able to manage these and be able to see insight into the environmental practices, the social practices, and the governance, which includes bribery and corruption and security and things like that in third-party relationships. These ESG reporting requirements are going to completely restructure how we approach third-party risk management in organizations. And so that includes these next elements of environmental and dealing with carbon and emissions and environmental protection and third-party relationships, social accountability and human rights, dealing with modern slavery, and you guys who have things like UK Modern Slavery Act, conflict minerals, California's Transparency and Supply Chains Act, health and safety. You have sanctions issues, import, export, and traceability materials, and we can go on and on and on. One RFP in the pharmaceutical space this past year had 16 different domains of third-party risk across several, I think it was 8 or 9 different departments that are coming together for a unified third-party risk program that include like environmental risks, ESG reporting, compliance and ethics of bribery and corruption, to information security, to privacy, to even animal testing and third-party relationships. You know, all these coming together, 16 different domains. You know, and organizations need holistic, complete insight into these risks across their organization. All this means that organizations cannot be managing third-party risk in manual processes with documents, spreadsheets, and emails anymore. It's a recipe for disaster and failure. You know, one organization I was talking to in the GRC world was spending 200 hours to build a report for the board of directors to find out that they had issues that started 11 months ago. You know, when you were trying to manage things with documents, spreadsheets, and emails, things slip through the cracks, they get missed. It takes a tremendous amount of time to reconcile and report information, and they lack a strong system of record and audit trail of who did what, when, how, and why that can be used to defend the organization to get itself out of trouble. There's growing risk and regulatory concerns. Documents, spreadsheets, and emails slow things down. We have the issues of silos of oversight where there's different departments doing different things. I've been interacting with a large healthcare organization in the United States. You know, they have 4 separate functions managing different aspects of third-party risk, and they want to provide an integrated strategy across these 4 departments. Each of these functions has their own processes, 2 of them with manual processes, documents, spreadsheets, and emails, and 2 of them with vendors, different vendors to manage risk. You know, you had procurement looking at the financial viability of third parties. You had IT security looking at the security and privacy in third-party relationships. You had continuity looking at the business continuity and resiliency of third-party relationships. And you had the compliance and ethics program looking at, you know, the compliance and ethics code of conduct in the relationships, all in different ways. And they're trying to now build an integrated strategy across these. So third-party management is often distributed in a disconnected function where different departments are going in different directions, as I just outlined. And more I'm seeing that organizations want to build a future of federated third-party risk management, where the past there's different departments working in things in different ways, to a future where there's an integrated strategy across departments to provide third-party GRC governance, risk, and compliance. The past focused on a lot of reactive approaches, where the future is focused on resiliency of the supply chain and third-party relationships. The past focused on a lot of documents, spreadsheets, emails, point solutions. The future is looking for an integrated technology platform to be able to measure, monitor, and provide 360-degree contextual insight into third-party risk. The past had silos of risk, where the future is also looking at how do we reliably achieve objectives in relationships and measure the performance of relationships. The past, there's responsibilities for third-party relationships. The future shows greater accountability for third-party risks and relationships. Now let's define what I call third-party GRC management, and we'll use the OSEG definition for GRC and adapt it to third-party risk. I helped contribute and author the OSEG GRC capability model, which the definition of governance, risk, and compliance is in. So GRC, by definition, is a capability to reliably achieve objectives while addressing uncertainty and act with integrity. The reliable achievement of objectives is the governance function. Addressing uncertainty is risk management, and act with integrity is compliance. So we adapt this definition for third-party GRC. What was third-party risk? And third-party GRC management is a capability that enables an organization to reliably achieve objectives while addressing uncertainty and act with integrity in and across its third-party relationships. This means that we have to bring together different departments and functions, whether it's procurement, IT security, ESG, corporate compliance and ethics, environmental, health, safety, quality, and other departments that are going in different directions, to unify them and build out a federated approach where these different departments can work together collaboratively within. It means we have to have a top-down strategy approach to third-party GRC management, where we define the strategy and what departments and functions need to be part of this team, and build a charter where this federated third-party GRC strategy can work together. From there, we define our third-party GRC management processes. And I'll have a slide on this in a couple slides, but from the onboarding to the ongoing management and monitoring to the offboarding. And these processes are supported by a strong information technology architecture. 5 strategic trends I see in third-party GRC in 2021 is a focus on integrity. A lot of focus on compliance and ethics, environmental, social governance reporting, and making sure that the organization that it is no longer defined just by its own traditional brick and mortar business, but it is managing the integrity of its values and ethics and commitments and obligations and regulations across its extended enterprise. There's a focus on resiliency and how do we become a more resilient organization, and that requires a focus on third-party risk because of the extended enterprise. The organization cannot operate without the extended enterprise. We're reliant and dependent on our third-party relationships, and therefore any type of resiliency strategy is going to include third parties. There's a strong focus on objectives to make sure that we can reliably achieve objectives in a dynamic, disrupted world that's been impacted by lockdowns. And as we come out of the pandemic, that there's strong governance of objectives in these relationships so that the organization can achieve its goals. There's a focus on federation and getting different departments to work together to provide a unified strategy on third-party governance, risk, and compliance, instead of all these point approaches focusing on individual areas of third-party risk that complicate things and nobody has a full picture and insight into third-party risk. That's a significant area. Now, let's break this apart again. I already referenced all those different areas of third-party risk. What happens when all these different silos that don't talk to each other, might have more risk exposure than they're aware of? What if IT security, let's use a simple risk stoplight diagram, a red, yellow, green. Red is a high risk relationship, yellow is a medium risk relationship, and green is a low risk relationship. What happens if IT security scores that relationship as a yellow? Corporate compliance and ethics, looking at bribery and corruption and things like that, scores as a yellow. Procurement, looking at the financial viability of the relationship, scores it as a yellow. Privacy scores it as a yellow. I mean, we might have all these yellows across the board, but at some point you have to ask yourself, do we have an aggregate risk exposure where those yellows actually equal a red? Do we have enough yellows in all these different silos that we actually have a red exposure in this relationship because there's too much risk when you aggregate it all? Now, when organizations are scattered in all these different departments managing third-party risk in these little silos, they can't aggregate the risk. They don't really know their full risk exposure in the relationship. We need to federate to be able to get these different departments and functions work together so we can see an aggregate risk exposure in the relationship, which also requires integration with our information technology architecture. From these 5 strategic trends, we see several key supporting drivers. We see the need for defensibility, being able to have a strong audit trail and system of record to defend the organization and keep it itself out of trouble. to deliver ESG reporting, and we're seeing this in regulations like what's coming out of the EU directive in Germany this year. We have a focus on environmental and health and safety and operational resiliency, like with the FCA, Bank of England, PRA guidance, as well as the US OCC and EU DORA. We see a focus on information security as well as privacy, dealing with GDPR and third-party relationships, human rights and slavery, where you've got UK Modern Slavery Act and California's Transparency and Supply Chains Act and conflict minerals and things, bribery and corruption I've mentioned, as well as greater accountability. But organizations need to be able to manage the entire third-party GRC management lifecycle from onboarding to offboarding. We have the onboarding process where we bring a third party on and do our initial due diligence, ongoing monitoring the relationships, which also involves continuous and ongoing due diligence and checks against third-party databases like politically exposed persons, negative news, watch lists, sanctions, reputation lists, and things. Maintenance and renewal of the relationship, and then finally offboarding when we terminate the relationship, where most organizations completely fail there because they don't have offboarding steps. And throughout this life cycle, we need to be able to manage risk and compliance, the performance of the relationship, conduct audits and inspections and assessments, and manage issues and see them through to resolution. We need to be able to identify our third-party relationships, monitor, assess, and reevaluate them, and understand the risks as well as the context of the value that the third party brings and balance those together. This means that we have to have an information architecture that can take in a lot of distributed and disconnected third-party data points, from contracts to transactions to due diligence against politically exposed persons, watch lists, sanction lists, and so forth, the geopolitical events that impact the disruption, like the Suez Canal and everything, assessments, attestations, capabilities, training, and more. We have to take in all this information, understand these contextually to understand what action items that the organization needs to address. This means we have to have a solid information technology architecture that can provide 360-degree contextual intelligence on third-party risk in the organization, where we understand our risks, their impact on objectives, the controls put in place to mitigate the risks in those relationships, the issues, events, incidents, cases, investigations where risk is materialized in relationships. We need to understand who owns the relationship, who's the specific subject matter experts on different risks in the relationship, what policies govern the relationship, what regulations impact the relationship, and where in the organization the relationship reports to. We need technology that can provide strong management reporting, where we have reports at a push of a button and not 200, employee hours labor later to get it, that it's there, that when we need it, as we need it. We have a technology that can deliver a strong audit trail and system of record of activities, and to have strong workflow and task management to make sure things do not slip through the cracks, with collaboration and enforcement. But the audit trail is one of the things I see coming up time and time again. What assessment and due diligence was done on what date and time? Do we meet our requirements? Were there exceptions to our controls and things in the relationship? Were those documented? And do we have an overall evidence trail and system of record of the activities and interactions of the relationship? So today's modern organization is looking for agile technology, modern user experience and interface that is highly usable, from the back office functions of risk and compliance to the front office that owns relationships, that has a low total cost of ownership to implement and deploy, that is highly configurable, scalable, adaptable, can integrate with internal business systems like ERP systems and things when you have master data records on third-party relationships, but can also integrate with external data sources, whether they're security scorecards and ranking systems to politically exposed persons and watch lists, sanction lists, and other new databases, and provide the right analytics, automate processes, and start leveraging artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, and the solution's always there, and it doesn't break on upgrades. The benefits of automating this, I break down into 3 categories: efficiency, effectiveness, and agility. Moving from manual processes for third-party risk to an information technology architecture that is built for third-party risk can deliver efficiency, time saved from manual processes, simplified and streamlined processes, reduction in reporting time, reduced staff to manage third-party risk, a greater effectiveness with less things slipping through the cracks, an audit trail of everything that happens for a complete and defensible system of record, as well as a great portal and information that allows for easier conversations with third parties and relationship owners. But it should also enable agility. It provide the ease of configuration to adapt to a changing regulatory and risk in the third-party environment, provide risk managed as relationships and roles change and evolve, streamlined agility and business change, such as like mergers and acquisitions, would bring in a whole redundant set of third-party relationships, and the ability to quickly identify needs with new relationships, roles, responsibilities, and tasks. At the end of the day, a strong federated strategy for third-party GRC that is supported by a solid information technology architecture should deliver agility, that we're more aware of our risk environment, not just our silos of risk, but how risk intersects and that full risk exposure across areas. This allows us to align and have stronger processes, an ability to negotiate as well as address risk in relationships, to become more responsive to issues, to be agile in a dynamic environment to prevent issues, to be able to be resilient and recover, and efficient. So my 5-step plan in developing a strategy. First off, understand where you're at today. Your organization is doing something for third-party risk. It can be very haphazard, siloed, manual processes, stuck in different departments doing things in different ways, to structured. So what is your current state? How are you addressing this today? And then what's your future state? What do you want it to look like in 2 years from now? And what's your journey to get there? From there, who's on board? Who's on the team on the strategy? And you need different departments to work together collaboratively, from IT security to procurement to compliance and ethics to legal to ESG reporting and more. And so who needs to be part of that third-party GRC journey and team? From there, you need the right technology that can deliver. Who's going to be able to deliver what you're trying to achieve 2 years from now? You don't want to start working on the strategy and find out that the technology you've selected only can get you through the first 6 months, and then it doesn't go any further because it doesn't have the capabilities to deliver what you're trying to achieve with your future state that you're trying to work towards 2 years from now. And then, of course, we have a lot of different types of third-party relationships, lots of different types of risk exposure, and you need to break things down into stages that are achievable for the organization. And also be prepared for changes, because we have things like COVID-19 that comes in and disrupts things, creates huge resiliency and risk issues in third-party relationships. We have mergers and acquisitions and other things that impact third-party relationships. And so we need to be highly agile and adaptable as the organization changes and be prepared for the next journey. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to our host today to hear some of their perspectives. And I think we're going to do Q&A at the end.
Yes, we are. Thank you very much for that, Michael. Thanks very much. It was a really enlightening presentation there. I'm sure as we go through more of our audience, we're asking questions as well. So thank you very much for that. So yeah, for the rest of the session for today, we're going to do a short demonstration of the Stream platform. So the Stream platform is an integrated risk management platform. There's a few, sorry, on the screen you can see right now is just a few of the different use cases that you could use Stream for. So you've got enterprise risk management, operational risk management, vendor risk management, obviously within your extended enterprise, which we'll go in more detail today. But again, you know, being able to link up these silos to get more of a overall aggregate view of risk, like again, business continuity, resilience, privacy as well, policy, maybe your audit management. Also looking at it from a vulnerability and asset management point of view as well, in terms of technical vulnerabilities. And again, they may even be on your vendors as well, that you need to understand, you know, what data do they hold? What vulnerabilities do they have? Are they fixing those vulnerabilities? You know, do they have accurate patch management in place as well? And so, yeah, this is just a very nice infographic to show you a few of the use cases that we can do within Stream. So let me jump out of the PowerPoint and I'll jump into Stream software itself. So here I'm just in a Stream solution that I've set up for today's webinar. I have set up a homepage that you can see here for a very simple third-party risk management. Essentially, what do I want to see when I first log in? I can see the third-party risks here spread out as red, amber, green, and then also for third-party controls as controls assessment on the right-hand side with a nice donut chart to show you as well, red, amber, green for all the controls that we have against our different third parties. From these home pages, you can have multiple home pages set up. So if I did want to view different home pages and, as I said, different use cases within Stream, I could also access that through the top right. If I wanted to look more from a data privacy point of view, I could go through here, look at data privacy management. Maybe I'm looking at business continuity as well. I could go through and look at those home screens as well. So these home screens can be set up for different users for the different hats that they may wear in terms of looking at it from resilience, data privacy, compliance and ethics point of view. These different home screens can be, they are drillable, so we can click through and see the data. All the data is live, so as Michael said, you know, getting a real-time view of that data as things change and update straight away in Stream. We can view that here. So we've got the third-party risks here. I could click into either of these areas in terms of the red, or I could click through from the arrow here to see a nice overview of the risk registers here. Here you can see the nice spread of the risks in terms of expected loss, residual risk, and the spread of those as well, and overall control deployment for these. I can then also jump through on the left-hand side. What we have here is our enterprise tree structure. Just to explain that, it's effectively how you could frame your business within Stream. So you could separate it out maybe as different types of risks, like corporate risks, maybe different types of departments or locations, such as like Germany, Spain, USA. Or if you wanted to, you can have, you know, your different types of tiering of vendors. So you could do create those here as well in terms of different risk registers. I've done them here in terms of different vendors on, tiers. Tier 1 would be the one that you do a lot of work with, who are highly, present a high risk to your organization. But likewise, as Michael said, you could have a risk register per each individual type of relationship you have. And from there, maybe even each type of site or facility they have as well. So you can capture that and able to report on those as risk registers within Stream. All of this, as I'm talking through, talking you through the different options. This is all configuration within Stream, not customization as well. So another point that Michael mentioned as well in terms of, you want a tool that's integrated all in one place that, when you do upgrades, that it won't break, and also that can mature with you as well. So if you did want to change your risk management approach, you could do that as well. It's a journey, not an endpoint. You can't do the big bang in one go. So the tool can mature with your process as well. Here for this on the screen, you can see I'm showing the tier 1 vendors for the risk registers. Here you can see the different assets that we have, which are the different vendors. I've just put in a few highlighted here, a few key risks in terms of compliance and ethics, like human rights, bribery and corruption, information security, privacy as well. Obviously, you can have all the different ones as well, like business continuity, as well, data privacy, for example, but just showing you a few here today. You can also see a nice general overview in terms of the control deployment against those risks, number of controls, expected loss as well. So if you're doing a quantitative risk assessment, and we can also do that within Stream and link it up to Monte Carlo analysis to get a real view from a loss exceedance point of view of how much monetary value can we assign to this risk and this third party. And then also residual risk in terms of points. So if you're doing more of a qualitative risk assessment still, so an impact and likelihood based on very high to very low, or however you like to assess your risk qualitatively as well. Just going back to the home page here as well, you can then see again the third-party controls. We can click through these as well and see the controls with a low control deployment percentage. Here I can see all these controls that have a low control deployment. I can also see them against the different third parties here as well, and their respective control deployments here. So a few zeros, 25%. You can see they're related to those risks that I mentioned before, such as modern slavery statements that they may have, data integrity policies, do they have those in place as well? On the left-hand side, where you can also see on the bottom left-hand side of the image, we also have different control sections as well. So again, kind of thinking of it as that integrated risk management platform. We can also include controls from, internal control frameworks, such as these third-party controls that we're asking out, or any published control frameworks such as PCI, DSS, NIST, CSF from a cybersecurity framework point of view, ISO 27001, again, information security, GDPR articles, principles for data privacy, any general mitigations that you may want to put in more from an op risk point of view. And again, we can see all those in one place and get a nice overview of the different areas or control areas that we want to see in the system as well. Okay, so moving on to how we could, get a real sense of how we are able to get good assurance from our extended enterprise. So here underneath the scope, I can view all of my assets that I have in Stream. And an asset in Stream is a target of a risk or control assessment. So here I can see all the different types of assets. So again, it's more, like Michael said, from a ISO 31000 point of view, you may have your business objectives, your processes, you may be looking at it more from an IT risk point of view, so you have your servers, your systems, your applications as well. And this is where we can all put those into one place within Stream. If I want to go through and view my third parties, again, I can click through here and have a look at all the different third parties that I have. You can see I've got Microsoft, Googly, Salesforce, different third parties. These are all just fictitious ones, obviously for today's demonstration. But I can jump through and see all in one place. So if I go to the Microsoft here record, in one view, all the risk and information that I need to see all in one place. So, we're not having this failure that Michael pointed out in terms of previously it was, really reliant on documents, spreadsheets, very email centric in terms of emails being sent by many different departments to the same third party. It's all in one place. So I can see the details here in terms of who owns it, what's the status. So as Michael said, you may want to be onboarding them or terminating them, or again, so maybe some of your other statuses that you may want to have is all configurable within Stream. We can capture that here as well. So Michael raised a good point that people often forget to, when they're going through and terminating a contract, they still want to mitigate those risks. Do they have any personal data still? Do we want to make sure that they delete that personal data after we've terminated the contract and get that follow-up with them as well? Here you can see on the right-hand side, then we've got all the different information in terms of risks. So there are the risks that I just showed you previously. So you can see we've got a couple of ambers and a couple of reds here as well. And then we've got some controls in place as well against this third party. So here we can see we've got 5 controls of a low control deployment, 1 amber and 1 green. They're doing okay. They've got an data integrity policy. But I want to make sure that they continue to make sure that they are giving us the correct data for that as well, which I'll come on to very shortly in terms of sending out a assessment for them to complete. Also, in terms of here, we can add in any other bits of information that we want about this third party. So we can also create actions as well. So we need to create a new action. We need to go and do an on-site visit there. We need to go and look at their actual information security controls that they have in place on site. Potentially there's been an incident at this third party, so you want to be notified of that incident. Again, that could be through a web form, which I'll show you very shortly. But again, it's all in one place in terms of the stream. So you can see here the incidents that you've had over your time and relationship with this third party as well, and capture them here as well. External audits, third party scorecards, all that information that you want to be able to capture, as Michael said, all those different bits of information, be able to link it all into one place and then form some actions in order to mitigate the risk from this relationship. Finally, towards the bottom here, you can also see that we've got documents as well, so we can attach documents like the contract here as well. Again, just for the full picture of all the information that you need to see. Here you can also see we can then share this with external users. So if we want to send external users a form to fill in, this would be the form that they could receive with regards to their controls, so an onboarding assessment or a continuous monitoring and assurance assessment against the third party. So it's just a case of pressing the plus icon here, sending it to a user such as, let's say, nigelsmith@hotmail.com, choosing a form that we wish to send. I'll send it to the vendor assurance assessment form. They can submit it once or many different times if they want to repeatedly submit it. And again, I can just send them an email notification, or I can edit it as well beforehand to just say, hi Nigel, please can you go through and fill in this form for me as you have done previously. I won't send this for today. I actually already have one that I've already shared with Sarah Smith here. So what would happen was Sarah would receive an email with a link to a web form on, and then she could come on and log in to her user here through the Stream web form. So if I go in for sarahsmith@microsoft.com, enter in the password, and you'll see here then we've got her vendor assurance form to fill in for Stream. I can click on the form, see the details of it, so the due date, who's going to review it, so Simon Marvel is going to review that. You can also see we've got some branding and some naming at the top with text. That's all configurable as well from the Stream solution. So if you want your own branding, you can put that in as well. So you can make it look like it's your own portal. And again, you can send that out to your third party to answer these questions, so they get the confidence that it's, it's come from yourself, and they can fill in this information. They can then go through and fill in the actual questionnaire. So you can see, does your organization have a modern slavery statement? Some guidance on that as well. And here they can go through and fill it in. So we'll say, yes, they do now. We have a new modern slavery statement. Fill that in. And then they can also attach the evidence for that as well as their actual statement. Again, we can then go through in bribery and corruption. I'll just quickly go through and answer these for today. Obviously, this is all configurable as well. So if you have your own questions that you like to ask in terms of being able to gain assurance from your extended enterprise in all those different silos. So like information security, privacy, compliance, ethics, all in one place. You could add those questions in. Obviously, this is quite a short form for today. It's only 7 questions long, but typically this would be quite a few more questions for the third party to fill in. So some information security ones as well. So yeah, we'll say that their sensitive information storage is implemented and effective in all cases. The same for privileged user access. And finally, privacy as well. Yes, we do have a sensitive data policy in place. Oops, and data integrity. So this could be sent out to a third party. They could come through, fill this in, and then click submit. That information would then come directly into Stream. So if I came into Stream here, you can see that we have our controls here. Again, quite a few of them are red, one's amber, one green, and also we have our risks, so 2 red, 2 amber. If I click refresh now on this page, what you'll see then is the controls have automatically gone to 100%, and that is from the form that I've just filled in. And because these controls are related to these risks, and I'll jump into one as well, so we'll jump into this human rights and slavery risk. You'll see that the residual risk has come down to 2, and also from a quantitative perspective, it's gone down to a loss of £14,000 per year. And that's because of the related control here for the Modern Slavery Act, or sorry, Modern Slavery Statement is now fully in place. And again, if I go into the details of that control here, I can view the assessment that was done here by Sarah Smith. She said yes. And if I want to view the history for that as well, I can go through here and see that she said yes on this date, and she added a comment to say yes, we have a new modern slavery statement as well. And if I had actually attached a document for that, again, it would appear here on the documents. So again, it's being able to get all of those processes and areas of risk in terms of, resiliency, business continuity, data privacy, ethics and compliance, all working together on the same team with that full audit trail of the assessments that we've done, the third party holding them to account to say, you said this on this date, you've sent over this assessment, thank you very much. But also working with them as well if it's not in place. So, let's put some actions in place to fix that as well. Maybe there was an incident, let's take an external audit and go and visit them as well as an on-site visit as well, all within one place in Stream. I think there was also a key point about then reporting. So we also have reporting in Stream. So here you can see we've got some pre-built reports. So if I want to view a heat map, I can come through and see the heat map for our tier 1 vendors. I can see and jump into these as well. So these 2 top right risks in the red are both for human rights and slavery for Googly and Alpha Industries. So I'd want to hopefully try to move those down. I can also see the initial risk and show the transition between them as well. So we're all going down in likelihood here as well. So get some really nice reporting for the board as well. I can also then see top 10 risks. So I can see top 10 risks against my third parties. So I may want to see them in terms of my qualitative risk assessment statements. So, in terms of high, medium or low. But it's also good here, you can see we've got quite a few ones on the border in terms of going into red. A couple of them here for human rights. You may want to look at it as well from a quantitative point of view as well though. So if I switch this to a quantitative point of view, you can see here we've got a massive risk relating to information security for Alpha Industries. So again, it's being able to differentiate between, you've got quite a few red risks, but if we do a monetary assessment and a qualitative risk assessment, being able to see, the real high risk of those 4 or 5 red risks and do put an actual monetary value against that as well. You can also pull some custom reports, obviously use the defined reports, and these are all agile, so you can change these, and all the data that you are viewing is live as well. So as I've gone through and updated that, all the reports are updated as well. You're viewing the live data as it happens as well. Okay, so let's just jump back to the actual presentation. So as I said, I've covered off there a small snippet of vendor risk management, but also you can see you can cover business continuity, privacy management, policy, audits, incidents as well, technical vulnerability management as well, all in one place within Stream. Just a note about the resources. There is handout available in today's webinar. If you go to the right-hand side to the menu, you'll be able to access those there. We got the data sheet and the solutions perspective from Michael. We also have those as well available on the website. So if you'd like to go to the website, acuityrm.com, we have other resources there that you can download for your own pleasure. We've also got other webinars, so earlier ones in the series as well. And we've got some other great, keynote speakers as well on there as well, and industry leaders talking about real thought-provoking subjects. So go and have a look at those as well on the Acuity website. Finally, as I mentioned at the start, this is the first of a 3-part series. We've also got 2 more coming up, one on May the 26th and one on June the 17th as well. So make sure you pop those into your calendars now. And then finally, if you would like any more information on Stream, such as to request a demo, please contact us on social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, watch any of our webinars, or if you'd like to contact us directly, you can see my email address here. You can also see Michael's as well. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll open it up now for questions from the audience. Let's have a quick look and see if we have any questions come in. So we've got one question here for you, Michael. Just quickly write this down. So, Michael, here's a question for you. In terms of getting assurance from vendors, how are you able to make sure that the data that you get from vendors is accurate and truthful?
Well, that's going to be a challenge no matter what, because you have to rely on some of the integrity of your vendors, as you're not going to be able to validate and check every one of them. Now, so in that context, it sort of depends on the scope of your program and what's included. But I've seen organizations that will go out and do audits and on-site inspections and exercise right to audit clauses to validate the assessments and questions gathered. And that could be random sampling of those third-party relationships. Like with the Fortune 100 company I mentioned that was doing the facilities around international labor standards. High-risk facilities that had a high risk of labor issues, standards like child labor, forced labor, working hour, they did an on-site inspection every year. Moderate risk facilities that had, a medium risk exposure, they did an on-site inspection every 2 years. And low risk facilities that really didn't have much risk in that area, they randomly audited, provided on-site inspections to just a handful of them every year. So I mean, but to some degree, you're gonna have to trust some of the assessments and things that are done. But you want to be able to show to regulators and things that you have a process in place and you're doing everything you can on your end to address that. So you need a strong system of record and audit trail. But I find that the best way to validate that is to provide, some level of on-site inspections and audits to validate that. Usually, by random sampling and focusing on some more of the higher risk ones on those.
Got you. Excellent. Yeah, perfect. And yeah, you hopefully just from a Stream point of view, you can see that you can capture those on-site visits and audits in Stream as well and relate those to the third party. So again, you've got that history and audit trail to say we went there on this date, we audited this sample, and we were able to get that assurance that we needed, that what they said is actually what they're doing as well. Thank you for that, Michael. We've got a question here about Stream. So it says, I saw that Acuity has ERM and ORM solutions separately. How do users use the solutions differently? It's a really good question. So ORM, so operational risk management, enterprise risk management, to be honest, they feed into the same solution as well, to be honest, and that is the whole solution of Stream. And as I've mentioned, and I think Michael mentioned, in terms of breaking down those silos and able to get a more integrated view of risk. So obviously operational risk management, you may have it in the different departments, the different areas of the business, you may split it out by geographical locations, and they're able to go through and really have a look at their operational risks and build that picture themselves. The ERM point of view, though, is then that you're able to give users higher access. So you're able to give, users essentially from maybe a central point of view, the central risk management function, ability to see all that data, and what they're able to do is then view and create a view and assess that aggregate risk as well, and able to pull that all together. So I think Michael mentioned, being able to create that aggregate view in terms of, we've got data privacy risks here all over the organization that everyone's marking amber. Actually put that collectively, is that then a red? Do we need to mark that as a red? I would say that's the way that they're kind of used differently in terms of ERM and ORM, but ultimately they do provide, and are working to the same principle, that an integrated risk approach is able to pull it all to one together to help manage the risk overall for the business. Okay, we've got another question for you here, Michael. So you mentioned ESG in your presentation. How do you think ESG will have an impact on third-party risk management going forward in more detail, please?
Well, it's going to completely restructure it, and I'd point to the blog on my website that I just published today, as well. This went on my newsletter. It's also my LinkedIn profile too. But you're seeing a significant focus on ESG reporting, and particularly, you've got two important pieces of legislation right now. You have the EU directive on mandatory human rights, environmental, and good governance due diligence, which is expected to be passed this summer in just a few months. And then you've got Germany's corresponding Corporate Due Diligence Act, which takes that directive and makes it German law. And that's going to be passed about the same time frame. Both these are expected to have a significant global impact, just like EU's GDPR had a global impact. These regulations, whether it's the Germany specific one or the EU one that covers all the EU countries, where it's a directive, so each country is going to have to implement its own legislation to bring that to enforcement. But it's supposed to have an impact like GDPR. Basically they have teeth. They expect fines and penalties similar to like antitrust enforcement and competitive compliance enforcement and GDPR enforcement. It's supposed to have similar penalties and teeth. And you have to have due diligence in these third-party relationships, extended enterprise, and this whole process established for it. And it's expected to be that it'll be in scope to hit anybody that has over 250 employees and doing over 50 million euros in annual revenue. But it doesn't matter if you're headquartered in Europe or not. Just as like a lot of US firms and others have had to respond to GDPR, organizations around the world that have any type of presence in Europe are going to have to respond to it. And so I see this type of legislation that we're seeing out of for the EU directive and the corresponding Germany country law, is going to have a global impact, driving a lot of this and restructuring a lot of third-party risk programs.
Excellent. Yeah, it'll be a real big impact, I think, to the industry. Thank you for that, Michael. Finally, we've got another question here for the web form functionality in Stream, and it says, do you need to have a user for Stream for the web form? So the good answer is no, you don't. Essentially, what the web form is open it up to the wider business in terms of getting that access and data into Stream. So I think Michael, kind of mentioned as well in terms of opening up the risk management to the wider business in terms of, third party and vendor relationships. The first line typically own those relationships. So what we could do with web forms is help to, broaden that within the Stream realm. So you're able to send those forms out as well as to the, the actual third party. You can also send it out to the first line, within your own organization. So you can get the relationship managers who actually own this relationship with the third parties to answer questions, raise incidents. They know of an incident that a third party's had a data breach. They could raise an incident. You could have a link to a web form on your intranet site. That data would then come directly into Stream, and they're not using up any user or licenses for that as well. The data is just coming in. So again, it's opening up Stream to a wider audience without any license implications in terms of usership. I know we're actually 5 minutes over there, so Thank you very much for your questions. If I haven't answered any, I'll make sure that we come back to those afterwards. I'd just like to say a quick thank you for Michael for joining us today, and thank you for everyone else as well who's been watching. Just another quick one about when you do close out today's webinar, there will be a survey. Please can you just take a few minutes of your day to fill that in? It's really beneficial for us. And thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.